is our panel. Jessica, if I start with you first, you're dyslexic, but it certainly hasn't held you back, has it?
I always usually start my talks with a quote from one of my really good friends, Albert Einstein. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. And I was definitely that fish. I was a dyslexic fish as well. I really struggled to understand the education the way I was being taught. I ended up having to go home and self-teach using hands-on methods, pizza to understand fractions. But I went through a journey of being really misunderstood during my education experience, and I had no awareness of the fact that I was dyslexic and what that means. So I just kept on trying to climb a fish as a tree that should, I kept on trying to climb a tree as a fish that should be in the sea, and I was very misunderstood and misplaced. But years on, I managed to find out I was dyslexic, and it's helped with my journey.
Ali, if I can come to you, you were diagnosed with ADHD much later in life, weren't you? So just tell us a little bit about how that came about.
I was 38 years old when I was diagnosed, and I just had my daughter, and I saw that, I was struggling really in those first months, and, having a kid is never easy, right? But I found I was really struggling with the monotony of having a newborn, and all my NCT mums were saying the same kind of thing, but I felt like I was struggling even more than them. And my husband said, I don't think you've got postnatal depression. I think you're just bored. And I was like, how can I be bored? I've got so much to do. There's so much to do being a new mum. But that's what helped me to learn that I needed more stimulation than most people. And that was my kind of journey from first learning that I was maybe a little bit different.
Did you see yourself as different people before you were both diagnosed? So to Ali and to Jessie, both of you.
I definitely saw myself as different. I did see myself as unstoppable. It didn't hold me back. But when I learned I had ADHD from a newly diagnosed friend who helped me to see I had it too, I learned that the challenges that I was experiencing, they weren't my fault, and it was just to do with my brain wiring.
I mean, neurodivergent is a new word at the moment that's being used. It's a great buzzword, and it's got great branding attached to it. But when I found out I was dyslexic, I was labeled as disabled. And when you think about the word disabled, they're basically saying that you're unable to do things. You're unable. And that was the label that was attached to my differently able abilities. Luckily, B-Science was a portal where I could express myself, I could explore, and I could innovate without boundaries. And I was no longer seeing myself as a disabled young person. I was seeing myself as someone that is differently abled, a unicorn that could have such great impact if I'm in the right environment.
Oh, I love that, a unicorn with amazing wings. Catherine, if I can come to you, bring sparkle back. I mean, these are stories you collate, you share. Tell us more about Bring Sparkle Back, because it's the best name ever.
So I wanted to create a compassionate space for women to really champion their stories, hear those stories. I left the 9-to-5, left my corporate role. Didn't realise at the time, but I was autistic. I didn't realise that until I was 42. But there was this common thread throughout my life of burnout, of the world just feeling too much a lot of the time and trying to fit into that world. So I quit the 9-to-5 to try and create a more soothing way of living, I suppose, and doing life for my nervous system, as opposed to what I was doing. So in that time, I've been a psychotherapist for the last 7 years. In the last 5 years, my daughter, she really held a mirror up to me. I have a daughter who's autistic, and it really was like looking in a mirror at myself. And I'm not sure that if she hadn't have given me that gift, that I would have seen that in myself. So through all of that, what I've started to see more and more is women who are late discovered, who very often get to a point in their lives where they have their own children, their children get diagnosed, and then going through the assessment process, you sat there like I was, nodding, saying, well, I thought everybody really struggled with eye contact. I thought everybody found that really overwhelming, and actually everybody doesn't feel that about eye contact. So it was a real unraveling for me, and that led me to starting the Late Discovered Club, which is a space for late discovered autistic women. It doesn't matter if you've got a diagnosis. Many women don't get access to a diagnosis, and it's there to support you on whatever journey you're at and whatever stage that you're at.
If I could just ask you, Catherine, on that point, because you've done a lot of research, but women are rarely diagnosed with neurodiversity, aren't they? Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to talk about autism especially, because that's the area that I have really focused on. But for a lot of women, you know, historically, autism research has focused on males. It's focused on white males, cisgendered males. So the inner worlds of women have never really been, or of girls, have never really featured in that research. So what happens is we have a diagnostic criteria that is very much gender biased towards boys and towards males. So at the moment in 2022, we would say that 3 times more boys than girls would be diagnosed with autism, which means that for my generation, I'm 43, there are probably hundreds and thousands of women who have never been picked up by anybody. So we're late discovered, we go under the radar, and for women especially, we mask. We learn from a very young age, we're socialized to fit in. So I refer to this as the Goldilocks effect. So we all grew up on Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Goldilocks went into the Three Bears' house, everything had to be just right. So I would say that Goldilocks was probably safety seeking. As a undiagnosed autistic girl, she needed everything to be just right because the world feels too much. The temperature, the textures, everything. And when you grow up being told that you're too much, that you're asking for too many things, you need too many adaptations, you need too many adjustments, what happens is you start to just put a mask on. And you start to endure the pain, you start to endure the discomfort. And that works for a while. But then you end up getting to a point where you hit burnout, and that's what I start to see in therapy. So there's so much work, there's so many stories that we need to hear, and the thing with late discovered neurodivergent women is that if you don't get a formal diagnosis, of which there are many, many barriers, I hear so many stories, your GP will say to you, and I've had this, well, you're too successful, so there's no way you can be autistic. But I want the people in this room to know that autism is not something that you can't tell that I'm autistic by looking at me. You can't see it because it is experienced internally. It's that if I try and describe it as, it's as though my thermostat is dialed up really high when it comes to all of my senses, my empathy, everything. So you're not going to see that. The only thing you're going to see is if it gets too much, but as a grown woman, I've learned how to manage that as much as I possibly can.
Can I just quickly ask you, there are, of course, lots of business people in the room here today. How should they approach someone who they think has neurodiversity, perhaps, in their organizations, in their company? Because like you say, firsthand, you can't see it.
No. And I think self-disclosure is a really hard thing, because even for the women who have managed to get a diagnosis, but for women who self-identify or who self-diagnose, many of the women who I work with in my Late Discover Club, they are at the pinnacle, at the top of their careers in global organizations. They do not feel comfortable disclosing to you that they are autistic. They will make their own adaptations. And I think we've got to see a shift in workplaces. We've got to hear these stories. We've got to understand what it feels like to be an autistic woman or a woman who's dyslexic or a woman with ADHD, neurodivergency, we've got to understand it from the individual's perspective, and we've got to create tools in which to have those conversations. So I ended up creating a tool called a SASA framework because there wasn't anything out there to really create that conversation, to think about what somebody's strengths are, to think about where your struggles are, to think about what adaptations that person has already made. But there's some things that we need adjustments and we can't make them on our own.
I know, Ali, you talk a lot about self-awareness as well. And I also loved the way that when we were speaking earlier and we were doing the research, you brought in superwoman, or superpowers actually. So obviously that ties into our theme of unstoppable and the fact that neurodiversity has both positives and negatives. So tell us a little bit more about the superpower and, the positive and negatives.
I do genuinely think of my neurodiversity as a superpower, and I think I'm always careful to talk about this because I am high-functioning ADHD. There's many people with neurodiversity who don't see their neurodiversity as a superpower because it gives them many more challenges than I have. But I'm lucky enough that, yes, it does give me challenges, and amongst those are poor working memory. The fact that I've had to write that down is ironic, and it shows you that I've got poor working memory.
I write things down too.
I've got time elasticity. So time, I'm either really early or I'm quite late. It's a bizarre thing to me, is time. I'm quite disorganized and I can be quite messy. But for all of those challenges, and there's many more, it also gives me great things as well. It allows me to be passionate. I'm intense. It allows me to be creative, to make connections that other people don't. And so I really see my neurodiversity as a superpower, and I wouldn't change it. It's just about being self-aware. For everyone to be self-aware, really, whether you've got neurodiversity or not, to know your strengths, your weaknesses. But it's even more important when you've got neurodiversity.
How about for you, Jessie? Neurodiversity, positives, negatives?
I would say that throughout my education experience and my career, there has been many downs, but there's been more ups. I've been fortunate enough to utilize B-Science, as I mentioned earlier, as a portal to explore, innovate, and create. I've gone to Sierra Leone and hosted conferences, national conferences with the vice president. I've advised the vice president of Liberia solely because I think differently. And I think now that I understand my differences and my superpower, I go for opportunities, NED roles, where I can think about things from a strategic point of view. I can develop strategies that can influence and support more young people like me. Being a part of Kiel University Board has enabled me to support more young people that may be in my position, from low socioeconomic groups that may not have the resources to take the tests or to get the support. And it's just enabled me to just explore more, understand that I need to explore, I need to innovate, and I need to test things, and I'm going to do it differently.
Okay, last question then to each of you. Just top line, please. What advice would you have to others who have neurodiversity?
Yeah, I would say you've got to learn how to nurture your strengths. That we have these, what I call spiky profiles. So, you have these immense strengths, but you also have these struggles, and you've got to find a way of making adaptations that you can make to your life. Yeah.
Thank you. Ali, very quickly.
I would say self-awareness, definitely. I never thought I wanted to be a CEO. I never thought I wanted to even work for myself. But it turns out that that's the best thing for me and my neurodiversity. And so self-awareness, learning about yourself, was key for me.
Lovely. And Jessie?
I agree with the self-awareness piece. Whether you're neurodivergent or not, I think just understanding your style and homing in on that style is very important.
Oh, can I just say a huge thank you to Catherine, Ali, and Jessie.